Number one, you've got to have a clear sight line to revenue minus cost of goods sold before labor. That gross margin is the production, and what is that number that that I need to be minimally stable?
Welcome to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping overwhelmed outdoor living professionals, landscapers, and hardscapers just like you increase your closing rate to over 75% without doubling your workload so you can build a seven-figure business that doesn't need you. I'm your host, Joshua Gillow. Let's dig in. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This week, we have Greg Crabtree on. Greg Crabtree jumps in here from Simple Numbers. I like to get him on at least every quarter or so to start talking about the state of our industry. Where are we as contract professionals? What are we doing out there? What are we supposed to be doing? What are we watching for? What are the smoke signals coming over the hill, if you will, and how are we reading them? So, Greg, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I want to get right into it here. To get a sense of the state of the home service industry economy right now for 2025 as we end off. And I'd like to get into your big read on the economy. Like, what's it looking like right now that you're seeing specifically for contractors?
Yeah, so start with the overall economy. So a couple of big picture items, regardless of the political aspects of it. Just keep in mind, we've closed the border and we've had 2 million people leave the country since January, either by voluntary leaving or forced leaving. So you don't take 2 million people out of the economy because all of them were consumers, every one of them, regardless of what your status. And so from that standpoint, just stay there. Birth rates are sinking continuously. So we're headed to a 1.5 replacement birth rate. 2.1 is stable society. The whole world is in that bucket except for the continent of Africa. And I don't look for Africa to be a source of labor anytime soon. And so this is a time like none other. If I have my history points correct, and I can stand to be corrected if not, but the only time we went backwards meaningfully for any length of time in population was during the bubonic plague, which ushered in the Industrial Revolution. Now, there may be an AI robotic revolution in front of us, but if you think about big picture economics, last time I checked, economics still requires a supply and demand equation. So if we improve efficiency and output, but have no more increased demand from some place, you actually end up prices fall. And deflation is an ugly situation that most people will tell you that live through it. It's not pretty until you get resettled. And so from that standpoint, yes, we are seeing increased output, but the demand is a challenge. Everybody's fighting for the top 30 to 40% of the wage earners in the marketplace and trying to sell everything you can to those people. And if you have a focused practice, and for many listeners to this podcast, those are the people that are spending money with you. It's not the bottom 60% of the wage earners that are spending money on, landscaping and hardscape, projects and renovation, home renovations, commercial renovations. Those are the upper income people. But everybody is, you've got the whole market focused on these people, and they are still, starting to make some switching decisions, in that regard. Our read of the economy is this. If I had to put a number on it, we're looking at, probably negative 1% GDP overall. Now, so that's not necessarily horrible, because I look at it as a positive for the people that are listening to this podcast that want to be best in class, great operators. This is the market that you want, because you are now going to separate yourself from the rest of the competition. In many industries right now that are the trades, the get sweaty, get dirty, get work done industries, you're seeing the bottom 20 to 30% of the businesses rethink their existence. And many of them are raising their hand and leaving for one way or another. They're either selling at a good price, not at a premium, or just closing down and walking away. And a lot of those businesses are doing that. Now, what that does is, yes, the marketplace may be soft, but this is the opportunity for the top, 2 to 3 competitors in any market area to gain market share by growth, not by market growing. Now, you got a handful of pockets of economies around the country, depending on where you're located, that you've got some upward mobility. I'm in Huntsville, Alabama. We got a lot of government spending here. We actually are in kind of a bubble that, we've got upward demand. But even with that, there's, it's not taken off like it did, in 21 and 22. A lot of that demand in 21 and 22 was fueled by cheap money, and people were refinancing their houses, paying for bigger projects. All of our renovation contractors, anywhere from renovation of houses to the all of the subcontractors and that your guys would be a part of, we're seeing consistent demand in that marketplace pretty much across the country. We've got a mastermind group that we work with, in the home renovation space, but their average project size is half of what it was in 21 because you don't have the ability to refinance your mortgage, roll in your renovation. And until interest rates appreciably come down, we've got probably another 5 years for the market to reset at prices to the current 30-year mortgage rates. The 30-year mortgage rates historically are not bad. It's just bad compared to the last 10 years.
That's right.
And you got, I think the last number I heard, I could stand corrected, but I think the last number I heard was over 60% of the current 30-year mortgages are at 3% or less.
Yep.
Still. And so average life of a 30-year mortgage is about 12 years. It may be a little longer right now because people don't have the luxury of flipping out of that house and going into another house, easily. But
Yeah.
we are seeing some movement in that space. And so I would say this, if you're really good at what you do, you will be fine. You might actually have some 10 to 20% growth depending on how many of the bottom end competitors get frustrated and leave. And so that's kind of our read of that. But here's the other side, though, that you got to be prepared for. And many of your listeners are in a part of the country right now that their activity is going to be low over the next 3 winter months.
Mm-hmm.
Projects are getting stretched and delayed. You'll start, have a block. And so when you have a project that gets delayed, your cost goes up because you're carrying laborers, carrying operating expenses, and you just didn't get enough past the cash register that month. And that takes a bite out of you. And so you've got to be really prepared for juggling jobs and pulling things into the present to make up for scheduling delays of things that get postponed. But we're just saying probably 25% more delayed projects that are good. They're going to happen. They're committed, but there's one reason or another, they're just not flowing through the system. And one of the things, delays and cycle times of projects have 2 impacts. You don't make as much profit, and it takes much more of your money sitting in the business to turn over those projects when the cycle time is like this instead of like this.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're flowing and going like we were in 21 and 22, you're hustling to finish the job to get to the next job. And that's where you get the double benefit of high velocity cash flow, as well as we're not price sensitive. It's your best ability is your availability. Well, right now, yes, you want to be available, you want to be highly responsive, but there's still some kind of gaps, in the system. But looking forward, I mean, I just don't see anything that's a catalyst to create true growth. Now, the government's going to talk about growth. I think the government's data is crap. I mean, just to be quite honest, because and just because, I mean, we measure this on our 100 company model, and I can appreciate the difficulty of what they're dealing with, because what's growth? We're not an economy of widgets anymore. We can't count production. We are largely a service-based economy. Well, how do you measure growth in a service-based economy? And so those are difficult things. but there, what we look at and make our own assertions is, I still think true inflation is about 2% higher than the government reported number of around 4%. And I think it's always going to be that way because they measure a distinct basket of goods, and that's not really what we spend, as
Mhm.
consumers, every month. And on top of that, you're measuring revenues, which is a poor excuse of measuring growth. Your revenues might go up, but there's three things why revenue go up. Number one, did I raise my prices?
Mhm.
Number two, did I gain growth of my market? And three, did I gain market share? And so how does the go if I'm looking at an increase in revenue from an analytical sector of the government, how do they know those? How do they parse out those three things?
Mhm.
It's a wild ass guess, and I appreciate the attempt to making a wild ass guess, but it is a wild ass guess because they don't know and they
Yeah.
have to make assumptions, and they're motivated to support a narrative, you know,
Mhm.
no matter who's in office, they're
Yep.
motivated to support their narrative. So I get it. So this is not, this has been done from time memorial. So, so this knows no difference in political parties. And
Yep.
and so when you look at that, we just look at the data that we see, and we're seeing an increased, use of AI to lower in the back office costs. And so
Mhm.
so here's the trends that we see in business right now. You're trying to keep your administrative non-billable labor as lean as possible and use every productivity tool that is available. And some of those tools are mind-blowing. I mean, the ability to take the suite of capabilities in Copilot, all of the tools that have come up through ChatGPT, Perplexity,
Yep.
Claude.
Yep.
I'm telling you, I mean, this is what I call the age of the democratization of technology. You don't need a programmer to increase productivity if you're willing to dig in. Now, what is on the emerging side are guides of people doing consulting it's not, crushing rates, but it is not cheap. But if you don't have that adventuresome side and you get overwhelmed by technology, there's a growing number of providers in the marketplace to help guide you through practical deployment, of these tools. And so we've seen it across the board. And so that's one place to where, I told somebody on a call this morning, the most important way that you increase profitability is get more margin output with less management labor.
Mhm.
And so I got to get lean and use those tools to its greatest ability. But on top of that, though, then you just got to really get good at your operational command of going, get the guys out of the yard in the morning, work play through the whistle every day, and push and keep a short cycle on those projects and get them done and roll to the next. And here's the other thing through this time of year that is probably the biggest issue: don't fall in love with your backlog. And what I mean by that is, get everything done that you have on your plate and have zero backlog if you have to, and give everybody Friday off with pay. But we see this time after time. The human behavior is scared to death to run out of backlog, and it's like, well, no, let's run out, let's get done. And it makes you available, and it actually makes you more clear eyed to the next opportunity that comes, versus the companies that we see this every cycle. You kind of milk the backlog, and when the early projects come out in the spring, you still haven't finished the things that you slowed down on,
Yep.
and it's like, what are you doing?
Yep. Yep.
We
Yep.
should have this all cleaned off our plate.
Yep. No, I love this, Greg. And do you think that during these times like we're in currently now that we should be focused on raising prices, lowering prices, keeping them the same when it comes to our margins and projects? What are your thoughts there?
So so we're only within the last 2 months I've seen in bid contracts where somebody goes out, submits, gets contracts and gets bids. We're starting to see the under $500,000 contracts get really competitive and start to do the thing that I hate, is pricing to cover overhead.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's the first sign of death.
Hmm.
And that's why I say, you'll get by with a little bit, but you won't be in business long. And
Yep.
and and we've seen it in some of the little more higher project trades, in that. But for most of your listening audience, they're dealing directly with the consumer. The consumer might get one other quote. They're not comparable. And
Hmm.
so I don't see downward pressure on price when you're not in an open, apples to apples competitive bid scenario. Those consumers are going, did you accurately hear what they wanted? Did you come back with them in a timely fashion with a price, and work with them on value engineering options if that price is outside of their budget, and communicate price, value, features, benefits.
Hmm.
And once again, I think your listeners that got away with poor sales and communication skills during COVID have got to step up their game, how they talk about defending their value. And this
Hmm.
goes back into, we're harping right now on the three P's. So if you're not profitable right now, there's only three reasons. Number one, I'm not priced effectively. Now, that's on me. I'm the leader. If I don't defend my team's value, nobody will.
Hmm.
So I got to get the price right first. Number two, have I given the people their processes and tools to be able to be world class at what we do? If I'm giving them wire pliers and baling wire when a pair of channel locks is needed for the job, okay, well that we got a mismatch of the tools and processes to be efficient and world
Hmm.
class in what we do. But if I took taking care of price and process, there's only one P left: people. And right now, there's talent in the transfer portal, and right now, if you've got underperforming people, I mean, and I'm going to sound like the Grinch stole Christmas right here. You can't afford to carry poor performing people right now. I don't care if it's Christmas season. I mean,
Yep.
there's talent out there. They may be slightly underskilled, but I would take a slightly underskilled and coach them up person all day long to somebody's got a bad attitude. It's a cancer to the team, and they were just a somebody that was could breathe oxygen when I had to have a body to do something. And right
Absolutely.
now,
Yeah.
you gotta elevate your staff, because the first time ever we've got more labor in the marketplace than we've seen in probably 20 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know during COVID, when everyone wanted to hire everybody, there was
Yep.
nobody available. Now it's
There
the
wasn't.
opposite, right? We have a lot more
It is.
opportunity to right size and to right fit
That's
people
right.
in our teams for sure, no doubt. So, what are some top indicators that contractors should be tracking right now?
You know, you've really got to know. I keep going back to, forget about revenue. It's not about revenue. It's about margin. So number one, you've got to have a clear sight line to revenue minus cost of goods sold before labor. That gross margin is the production, and what is that number that I need to be minimally stable. I mean, we want minimum 15% profit gross margin. Now, with seasonal contractors, you know, I I hate to say this, but I'd at least want to be 5% minimum profit to gross margin every month, even through the slow season, because you're going to be 25% profit to gross margin or higher during the high season.
Yeah.
And so what you're, but what, when times are good, you've got a cap of activity. There's only so much you can do.
Hmm.
When times are slow, that's where you've got to try to not burn a dollar to go backwards, because those losses are much more difficult to overcome than trying to squeeze out more productivity when you're in high season, because you're already up against the productivity wall. Hey,
Hmm.
you just can't go any faster, in that process. And so this is a critical time. We've seen more companies turn around their fortunes to limit and eliminate losses in the off season, versus vice versa, going to, oh, let's get good in the big season. So that's really kind of big.
Yep.
And so to that point, so the measure is, our total LER. And so in the contractor realm, you're pretty much at a minimum, you need $2 of gross margin for every dollar of labor you're committed to. So everybody's on your payroll. You got to get $2 of gross margin for that minimum. And if you have a heavier OPEX structure, you might need to get 2.2. But if you get two, I guarantee you, I mean, everybody listening to this thing in your industry, if you take your committed labor for December, multiply it times two, that gross margin will give you a survivable profit, if not really a good, probably 15% profit through that winter time. Now, if you don't have it, you got two choices. Can I shorten that labor for a time being? But if it's somebody that I feel like I need to keep during that off season, what can I find to sell to do to get as close as I can to that two? Probably no worse than a 1.9. Probably 1.9 would probably still make you break even to slightly profitable. But I don't like aiming at break even. I mean, we was taught that in college. I mean, and in real world practice, striving for break even is the dumbest idea ever. So you got to strive to sustainable profit. And that's 15% profit to gross margin. Your target should be 20. Stretch time should be 25.
I love it.
And but because especially in your industry, revenue is a canard. I mean, not every dollar's of revenue is the same. So quit looking at it. Look at your revenue minus your materials and subcontractors to get that gross margin. And if I could just beat it into the head of everybody in your industry to never say revenue when you're talking with your team. You only talk in gross margin terms. I mean, that would be a game changer for everybody.
Yep. Yeah, I know in business, it's always exciting to see that big gross, big number, big gross revenue. You're like, oh, it's so big. But then once you spend all the money out of it, you get down to that gross margin, then you're like, oh, wow. It's kind of like just this little piece left at the end. You're like, that's the economics of the business because everything else is spent. So
that's right.
That's really what we're after, no matter if you're selling widgets or selling outdoor living.
Here's a good story to drive that home. So back in the early .com days, Travelocity wanted to count all of what they charged as revenue for the airline tickets that they were doing. And the accounting industry looked at it and pushed back and said, no, your revenue is the $4.95 that you get for processing every airline ticket. The other, that's a pass-through. Exactly. And so, you sold a $500 airline flight, but you turned around and gave, $495 back, to the airline, and you kept $5. Well, that's your revenue in real terms. And that's the way we really all should think. And that,
because we got to run our business. We have to run our business off that gross margin, right? Everything comes out of that. So the top line doesn't matter really. And you can do $1,000 a year and have 100% gross margin, and you have $1,000 to work with, or you could have $1,000, gross sales a year, and then it costs you $1,000. You have zero gross margin. It's still $1,000. So the question is, what's left after you pay the bills?
I've actually seen clients grow $10 million in a year top line revenue and go backwards in gross margin dollars.
Yep.
And it's like, what were you thinking?
Well, it's fun at a cocktail party, right? You could say, I'm a $10 million company, but you lost money. It's like, oh goodness, I love it.
I had a business, and really it drove, it wasn't until I was in a business group meeting and we had a little forum, and one of the guys was a construction contractor, and he was always crowing like a peacock about $20 million of revenue. And he had a pickup truck and two employees and a cell phone. And so when we shared our data in the group, it's, when you take out his subcontractors and materials, he was a $2.5 million services business is what it was.
Yeah. It's wild, right? But at the cocktail party, 20 sounds much better. But you can't pay bills with that.
When somebody starts with revenue, I'm just not impressed.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. That's cool. So what do you think that contractors should be doing right now to start preparing for the 2026 season coming up?
Well, I really think, you kind of have to look at your operating structure, and we've got a couple of people that are in this situation that they're, some are looking in markets where, okay, they feel bullish about their local economy, that they feel like that they're going to pick up some market share. And so they're cautiously optimistic. So here's the strategy. If you feel like your market is bullish, that you can pick up some share or you got some growth in your local economy. Don't add the infrastructure yet. look at go through the process, look at your wish list of, for the next $5,000 a month of operating expenses that I can allocate. What am I going to spend it on? Is it a person? Is it a tool? Is it a piece of a production equipment that helps? But not you're hired direct labor as you need it. I'm talking about the chassis of the business, because you can get away with it for a little while, but that chassis has to expand when you get bigger, and so that's going to be the key. And so have that tools at the ready, but I would still say hold back, wait until you feel that pressure that you spend it at the last possible moment, to add it. Converse side, the strategy for those other operators that is a little cloudy, you may have to make a hard decision of retreating back to your safe zone. And so to a couple of points here. So think about gross margin instead of revenue. If you have gross margin of $2 million or less, you have more flexibility of kind of flexing between $1.5 million to $2 million in gross margin. When you have gross margin that gets into that black hole of 3 million to 4 million, you've got to ask yourself, is that sustainable? Is the market going to give me that amount of gross margin? Now, once you clear 4 million of gross margin, you just got to you have much more adaptability of slicing cost. You may not think you do, but you do. But when you get through the black hole of crossing 3 million is the deepest, darkest moment. When you get to 4 million, the clouds start to part and you go, okay, we're going to make it. But when you get up into that 5+ in gross margin, you gotta really make an honest assessment of the marketplace and say, we could grow to 10 million of gross margin, but we won't make any more money. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And so there, and that's why my theme for 26 is it's the year of optimization. I think every business has to optimize, and optimize means you may grow where others may shrink. You may shrink where others may grow, but you do what is in the best skill set for your management ability, your team's ability to handle. You make sure you're, above all else, you're profitable and you're economically stable with what you got. And then be open to, as opportunities get presented, when you see an opportunity, there's one of two things that's going to present itself. Is this a temporary opportunity, or is this permanent step up to the next level? So when you win recurring work from a competitor, that's a move up to the next level. You will have to support your infrastructure to attain to that next level. But if it is just a temporary one-off project, then you got to go to your team and say, listen, all right, here's the deal. We don't think that there's work like this coming behind it when it's done. So here's the deal. We're going to stretch, won't be comfortable, but I'll make it worth your while. And we're going to stretch up to get this done. And when it's over with, we're going to be stable, and you're all still going to have jobs. And I'll be use a bonus structure or something to give them some type of spiff to take care of it. But in the last year that we've seen this kind of thing start to emerge, we've had some amazing entrepreneurs that have used that stretch to cover temporary growth spurts, and then fall back to a position that's still profitable. And now they're not having to chop, overhead, which is, once you add it, it is hard to turn it off.
Yep. No, I love that. It's so true. You got to be able to flex and stay lean and mean, because you don't know what's coming next, right? So don't start
Yeah,
buying all kinds of overhead or tallying all that cost up when at the end of the day, you don't know how long it's going to last. So that's your point. If you don't have
absolutely.
a long trail for that. So, well, Greg, I appreciate your time on here. Listeners, hope you got a lot. I always get a lot from Greg.
Good.
He's amazing. Him and Simple Numbers, they've done a lot for us, and they've
Yeah.
been great. Next week, he's going to be back on here. We're going to talk about preparing for the next 3 to 6 months. Greg's going to bring out his crystal ball, and he's going to share with us what he thinks is coming, and so we can start preparing. So, Greg, thank you for coming. I can't wait for the next episode.
Good deal. All right. Thanks.